After 4 exhausting days at an international technology summit in Seattle, Mara Ellison returned to the headquarters of Northstar Dynamics expecting congratulations because the cybersecurity division she had spent 7 years building had just completed its most successful quarter in company history, delivered a critical infrastructure project ahead of schedule, and secured funding for a major expansion. Yet the moment she stepped into the 12th floor operations center, she knew something was terribly wrong when the normally crowded hallway was silent. Her team's glass walled workspace had been stripped bare, and the framed awards, monitors, whiteboards, coffee machine, and even the small collection of plants her employees cared for had vanished. When Mara finally found her 8% team squeezed into an unused records room 2 floors below the parking garage, surrounded by concrete walls, humming electrical panels, folding chairs, and boxes of obsolete files, her deputy Jonah Reed quietly explained that during her absence, newly appointed executive Calvin Roque had ordered them out with barely an hour's warning, so the entire technology floor could be converted into an innovation showcase for his handpicked consultant, Elliot Vane, a charismatic stranger who had promised senior leadership that he could double company productivity within 90 days. Mara listened without interrupting as her exhausted employees described how Calvin had dismissed their years of proven results as old-fashioned execution, announced that Elliott's experimental system was the future, and told them that working from the records room would build resilience. While the consultant received their former office, their best equipment, and a private conference suite overlooking the city. Instead of confronting Calvin immediately, Mara surprised everyone by asking them to continue working exactly as they always had, preserve every project file, document every process, save copies of completed work, record every performance metric, and quietly assemble a complete history of the division's accomplishments. Because she understood something Calvin did not. That when people are determined to erase your value, documentation becomes your strongest witness. And while her colleagues assumed she was simply protecting them from unfair treatment, Mara had already begun calling former clients, industry contacts, and executives she had met during her years managing disaster response technology projects, including Priya Shah, the chief operating officer of a rapidly expanding competitor who had once told Mara, "If you ever decide to build something of your own, call me before you call anyone else." For the next 3 weeks, Northstar's leadership celebrated Elliott's supposed transformation while Mara's team worked in miserable conditions, enduring unstable internet, leaking pipes, broken ventilation, and constant interruptions from maintenance crews. Yet their productivity never collapsed because Mara divided responsibilities carefully, with Jonah rebuilding their technical documentation, Lena Ortiz organizing security architecture, Marcus Bell mapping critical systems, Tessa Nguyen auditing code, Owen Price preparing client transition records, Nadia Cole preserving testing procedures, and Samir Patel documenting every unresolved risk. And although morale repeatedly threatened to break, Mara reminded them that professionalism was not something they owed their employer. It was something they owed themselves. Then, on the morning of the executive demonstration, Elliott unveiled his revolutionary platform to Northstar's board, confidently promising dramatic savings and claiming that Mara's division had been operating at barely half its potential. But when the directors began asking unpractical questions about security vulnerabilities, implementation costs, custom migration, and the three major systems his presentation supposedly referenced, his polished confidence collapsed because he had never actually worked with any of them. The board meeting ended in uncomfortable silence, and Calvin immediately tried to shift blame by telling the directors that Mara's team would eventually translate Elliott's vision into reality. But before he could finish, the board chair received a message showing that one of Northstar's largest clients had independently contacted Priya Shah about moving its next generation security contract elsewhere. And the situation became even more alarming when Priya arrived at headquarters that afternoon with a proposal, not for Northstar but for Mara and her entire team. Calvin laughed when he first heard the offer, insisting that nobody would abandon a prestigious company for an untested competitor. Yet Mara calmly placed a folder on the table containing employment agreements, salary figures, relocation assistance, signing bonuses, and a detailed proposal for a new cybersecurity research division, where her team would have authority over hiring, technology strategy, and project selection. And when Calvin finally understood that Priya had offered them substantially higher salaries and genuine autonomy, his expression changed from arrogance to panic as he demanded, "How long have you been planning this?" To which Mara simply replied, "Long enough to know the difference between a temporary inconvenience and a permanent warning." Calvin immediately offered countermeasures, promising to restore their old office, match salaries, cancel Elliott's contract, and even give Mara a promotion. But she refused because the decision had never really been about money or a better desk. And when he angrily accused her of abandoning the company after everything it had given her, Mara reminded him that her team had delivered the systems keeping Northstar's most important clients secure while executives had repeatedly ignored their achievements, and that the basement had merely made the truth impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Elliot discovered that his previous employer had disputed several of the performance figures he had presented to North Star, and an internal audit revealed that some of his celebrated 300% productivity improvements were based on selectively reported pilot projects rather than verified company-wide results, causing the board to launch a formal review of Calvin's hiring decisions. While Mara's team continued documenting every procedure and preparing a clean transition so that when they eventually left, nobody could accuse them of sabotage, negligence, or theft on their final Friday at North Star, Mara gathered her team inside the cramped records room and told them the company had finally approved their resignations, prompting Jonah to ask whether she felt victorious, and she answered with a quiet smile that victory would not be watching Calvin lose his position, or Elliot pack his certificates into cardboard boxes, but seeing 8 talented people walk into a new workplace knowing their abilities were valued. Before leaving, they completed every handover document, identified every outstanding issue, briefed their replacements, returned every company device, and left behind a division that was more organized than the one they had inherited. While upstairs, Calvin faced the board alone as directors questioned why a profitable engineering group had been driven away, and why a consultant with questionable credentials had received resources that the proven team had been denied. And by Monday morning, Mara and her colleagues were standing inside a bright new office overlooking Puget Sound, opening laptops engraved with the name of their newly created division. While Priya raised a coffee cup and said, "You didn't lose a team, Mara, you discovered what your team was capable of building without anyone standing over them." 6 months later, the new division had grown from 8 employees to 36, secured 3 major contracts, developed a security platform that attracted international attention, and created opportunities for young engineers who reminded Mara of the people her former company had overlooked. While Northstar quietly abandoned Elliott's failed transformation program and moved several executives out of leadership after an internal review concluded that the company's obsession with flashy promises had nearly destroyed one of its most valuable departments. Mara never celebrated Calvin's downfall, never contacted Elliott, and never publicly discussed what had happened in that basement, because she had learned during years of crisis work that the strongest response to being underestimated is not revenge but reinvention, and every time she walked past the glass doors of her new division and saw her former basement team laughing around a table covered with new ideas, she remembered the lesson she had tried to teach them from the beginning. When someone pushes you into a corner, they may accidentally give you the space to build something bigger than they ever imagined. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.